when the network changes a show, from one night to another, Columbo, they moved it from Wednesday night to Sunday night. The actor has nothing to do with that. I mean, that wasn't my decision.
You've seen The Raincoat, The Cigar, and that famous Just One More Thing. But Columbo is hiding far more than it lets on. Behind the cozy pacing and simple crimes are tricks, tiny props, and a bold storytelling choice that most viewers never fully notice. Even Peter Falk slipped in personal touches that quietly changed TV detective shows forever. Today, we'll uncover the small details that make Columbo so clever, starting with one subtle idea that flips the whole mystery upside down: the unconventional detective format. Columbo turned the traditional slaying mystery on its head by employing what's known as the inverted detective story format, sometimes called the Haukakum. Instead of focusing on who committed the crime, each episode reveals the perpetrator up front, inviting viewers to become armchair detectives. This shifts the tension away from solving the mystery to watching Columbo methodically unravel the culprit's alibi and catch them in a trap. It's a clever reversal that keeps audiences engaged by making the detective's process the real puzzle. This format allowed the show to focus on character interaction and psychology rather than standard whodunit tropes. Because the villain is already known, the suspense arises from watching their arrogance and mistakes slowly tighten the noose. The audience experiences a sense of superiority, but is also placed in a position of anticipation, curious to see how Columbo's seemingly bumbling but brilliant tactics will succeed. This fresh storytelling approach distinguished the show from other crime dramas of its time. Columbo's creator, Richard Levinson, and William Link pioneered this narrative structure with earlier works, but perfected it here, creating suspense through methodical detective work rather than surprise reveals. The format plays on themes of hubris and vulnerability, as clever criminals are undone by small oversights or Columbo's relentless questioning. This psychological duel became the spine of the series, elevating it beyond a typical procedural. Many detective shows rely heavily on elaborate twists, but Columbo's consistent success came from the subtle art of watching the detective's mind at work. Each episode builds carefully, with Columbo's quiet observations and peculiar mannerisms luring suspects into revealing contradictions or guilty reactions. The format encouraged viewers to pay close attention, rewarding those who noticed hidden clues and Columbo's strategic probing. This storytelling choice also shaped the show's pacing. Unlike fast-cut thrillers, Columbo's episodes often unfold at a deliberate conversational tempo. The investigation feels grounded and realistic, reflecting how patience and persistence are crucial in real police work. It's a refreshing break from sensationalism, creating an atmosphere where quiet attention to detail triumphs. The entire system made the writer's job easier, as they could then write character-centered episodes with a wealth of characters, and the villain was most of the time from the upper-class society. The contrast of everyday genius versus privileged criminal was not only a conflict, but also a deepening of the social commentary that was already present in many episodes. Columbo, in his ordinary garments and inoffensive demeanor, plus the elegant, haughty slayers, created an interesting interaction that became one of the characteristics of the show. The biggest point, however, was that by this procedure, the audience was allowed to feel the emotions of the detective and the suspect from different angles. Columbo's victims, while supporting his justice and humility, also become fascinated by the psychological intricacy of the slayers, their motives, and tricks. The dual perspective played a major part in the storytelling, as it made the detectives' stories of that time very rare in this respect. This intricate yet accessible format set the stage for Peter Falk's unforgettable performance, whose personal touch would further shape Columbo's iconic status. Peter Falk's personal touches. Peter Falk's portrayal of Lieutenant Columbo is inseparable from the character's enduring appeal, and much of what viewers loved about Columbo came from Falk's own improvisations and instincts. The character's signature traits, the shabby raincoat, the cigarette, the idiosyncratic mannerisms, were partly Falk's ideas or adaptations. His ability to blend casual clumsiness with razor-sharp intelligence gave the detective an inviting warmth that drew audiences in. For instance, the famous rumpled trench coat was reportedly Falk Oak's own, purchased cheaply and worn during filming to emphasize Columbo's disheveled and unpretentious nature. This wardrobe choice helped create a distinct visual identity that countered typical polished TV detectives. Falk believed that Columbo's clothes reflected his focus on substance over style, reinforcing the idea that the detective's power lay in observation rather than appearance. Beyond clothing, Falk contributed many character moments and gestures, such as the constant fumbling with his cigar, or nervously lighting and relighting it. These small behaviors made Columbo feel human and approachable, setting him apart from stoic or hard-boiled detectives common at the time. Falk once said he wanted Columbo to come across as disarming, someone you wouldn't suspect, but who was quietly piecing everything together. Falk's natural charisma and improvisational skills also enriched dialogue and interaction. He often ad-libbed lines or reactions that added layers of humor and nuance. Writers allowed this leeway because Falk's instincts frequently enhanced scenes, lending authenticity and spontaneity. The result was a character who seemed both tangential and laser-focused, an unrivaled paradox on television. Remarkably, numerous of Columbo's notable phrases, among them "just one more thing," were not included in the initial scripts, but originated with Falk's efforts to find ways of subtly interrupting suspects. This became the signature method of interruption, which was so effective that it disarmed both suspects and audiences with a seemingly casual tone. The phrase turned into a favorite signature that fans immediately linked to the character. Falk, on the other hand, demanded that Columbo be portrayed as a very understanding person and not as a hero who flaunts his superiority. He fought against the temptation to make the detective too sure of himself or too showy. Instead, he focused on Columbo's simplicity and tenacity. This subtle representation made the character more human and thereby accessible to the audience who valued intelligence coupled with kindness and perseverance. The actor's partnership was reflected in his ease with guest stars, too. Falk's very patient listening and wise telling created great exchanges that not only supported the narrative, but also made every ongoing battle feel new. His linking on very delicate emotional planes turned the psychological wars between Columbo and the villains into a great deal. On the other hand, sometimes Falk's health and personal troubles behind the scenes decided the tempo and style of his performance, which added an extra layer of vulnerability to the character. This dimension of real life added to Columbo's personality complexity, and so made the role even more attractive. Falk's commitment to the character was for decades, and it was that very commitment that made Columbo a cultural icon. Yet to truly understand Columbo's roots, we must look at the fascinating real-life inspirations behind the character and the show itself. Real-life inspirations behind Columbo. The character of Columbo and the show's concept didn't emerge in a vacuum. They drew from real people and experiences that shaped their distinct style. Richard Levinson and William Link, the creators, were inspired by earlier crime fiction and personal encounters that informed their vision of a detective who solved cases through intellect and subtlety rather than brute force. Their goal was to craft a character who stood apart from the traditional, glamorous sleuth archetype. One significant inspiration was a real detective known for his seemingly absent-minded demeanor that belied sharp observation skills. This dichotomy appealed to the creators as they developed Columbo's unassuming but tenacious personality. The idea was that true genius doesn't need flashy displays. Quiet persistence wins out. In the end, this approach reflected a real understanding of police work as much as narrative innovation. In addition to police models, the Columbo character borrowed elements from classic literary detectives but inverted the tropes. Unlike Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot, Columbo lacked grandeur and polish, instead embodying the working-class, relatable underdog. This grounded realism was key to the show's appeal, and was largely influenced by Levinson and Link's desire to portray crime-solving as a thoughtful, human endeavor. Interestingly, some ideas originated from earlier television personalities as well. For example, the loose, conversational style was partly inspired by Henry Fonda's performance in The Wrong Man, where an ordinary man's confusion and determination are central. This human-centric perspective influenced Columbo's narrative tone. The creators blended these inspirations into a fresh, accessible format. William Link once mentioned that part of Columbo's charm came from everyday American life, drawing on their experiences growing up amid the cultural shifts of mid-20th century America. The character's working-class roots, his manners, and his doggedness all reflected this sensibility, creating a hero who felt like one of us. This originality contributed to the show's long-lasting success. The real world also influenced Columbo's setting and storylines, with many episodes inspired by actual crimes, social issues, or legal dilemmas. This blend of reality and fiction gave the series an authenticity that resonated deeply with viewers. The cases often highlighted themes of justice, morality, and human weakness, connecting the show to broader cultural conversations. Even the actor Peter Falk took inspiration from personal encounters with detectives and people he met over the years, deepening his understanding of the character beyond the page. His ability to absorb authentic behaviors into Columbo's persona was partly due to these real-life observations, blending fact and fiction seamlessly. Notably, the creators' reverence for their real-life inspirations extended to respecting accuracy in police procedure, which was more uncommon in television at the time. This attention to detail ensured that Columbo felt credible in its depiction of crime and investigation, even while playing with narrative form. This grounding in genuine experience, combined with inventive storytelling and Falk's personal artistry, crafted Columbo into the beloved classic that continues to captivate audiences. The character's authenticity would be further enhanced by props and wardrobe that carried symbolic meaning and story. The subtleties of these choices reveal even more layers that fans can appreciate within the show's visual and thematic fabric. Iconic props and wardrobe secrets. One cannot think of Columbo without immediately picturing his rumpled trench coat, wizened face, and ever-present cigar, each element carefully woven into the character's fabric to support his persona. The trench coat, perhaps Columbo's most recognizable feature, was actually actor Peter Falk's own, bought for a mere $7. Falk insisted on using it, arguing that the worn, mismatched garment perfectly symbolized Columbo's unpolished but effective approach to detective work. This coat wasn't just clothing, it was a visual narrative hinting at a man who doesn't rely on prestige or appearances to get the job done. The cigar, another subtle but powerful prop, characterizes the detective. Columbo is almost always seen with the cigar he is famous for, and this habit not only contributes to his distracted, absent-minded image, but also acts as a calming ritual during the investigations. The writers initially planned for Columbo to be a heavy smoker, mainly for the sake of atmosphere, but also as a projection of his old-fashioned, blue-collar figure. The cigar's presence helped make the detective more human, giving him quirks that the audience found relatable and harmful rather than glamorous. The character of Columbo is furthered by his unbuttoned shirt and drooping shoulder, which altogether constitute his everyman appeal. This visible modesty is in stark contrast with the criminal's luxurious attire and their polished self-assurance, thus highlighting the class differences that the series revolves around. The shabby grab allows the audience to lower the detective's status along with the show's villains, thus making Columbo's victories more gratifying. Equally important is how these costumes and prop choices subtly inform Columbo's interactions with suspects. The trench coat and cigar often provide him with something to fiddle with, distracting the opponent or offering moments of disarming casualness. Falk used these tools masterfully, turning simple gestures into weapons of psychological warfare. Whether tugging his coat collar or nervously lighting his cigar, these mannerisms conveyed a thoughtful, probing mind beneath apparent absent-mindedness. Generally, the production crew responsible for the props put forth a lot of effort to maintain reproducibility throughout the filming of the series, letting them seem spontaneous rather than artificial. The trench coat that appeared to be old and worn out was never replaced, nor was it really cleaned to the point of losing its authenticity. Thus, the coat's retention of the character's quality through the years contributed a lot to its acceptance by time, as well as the audience's visual connection with the character being realized quite deeply. The props also were very subtly changing during the series' runtime. For instance, in the first season, Columbo would be seen smoking a cigar that was rolled very tightly, but just after a couple of episodes, it started to be less tightly rolled. And so he began to be seen as a detective more confident and at ease. The coat's wear also evolved and became quite a reflection of the era, while at the same time mirroring Columbo's zeal for solving cases. Besides the coat and cigar, Columbo's shabby Peugeot 403, the car, also contributed props that highlighted his humble personality. The car, which was often ridiculed by the suspects, became an essential trait of the detective's character: reliable, overlooked, and humble. It was very much opposite to the luxury cars of the villains, and hence visually reinforced the social status divisions that were intricately woven into the storyline of the series. To put it in a nutshell, Columbo's attire and props were not just costumes, but also means of storytelling. They were the character's bridge that displayed a lot about him without using words. The subtle physical characteristics became the signs of being that changed the viewer's impressions and contributed to the formation of the show's peculiar tone. These iconic visual choices intertwined perfectly with the show's casting of distinguished guest stars, whose presence infused Columbo with fresh energy and complexity. Memorable guest stars' impact. One of Columbo's greatest strengths was its revolving door of guest stars, many of whom were Hollywood legends or well-respected actors who brought charisma and complexity to their roles as the sometimes charming, often cunning culprits. The show attracted names like Leonard Nimoy, William Shatner, Robert Culp, and Johnny Cash, each contributing their star power and unique style to make every episode feel fresh while maintaining the series' signature tension. This high-caliber casting elevated the show beyond typical procedural dramas. These guest stars didn't just play villains, they brought deeply human traits to their characters, often blurring the line between antagonist and sympathetic figure. Their nuanced performances added emotional depth and moral ambiguity, enriching the storytelling and allowing viewers to question motivations and ethics. This complexity challenged Columbo's relentless pursuit and raised the stakes of each episode. The notable involvement of guest stars also demonstrated the respect Columbia Pictures Television had for the series, leveraging their fame to draw viewers without overshadowing Peter Falk's central role. The interplay between Falk and these actors created unforgettable scenes marked by a battle of wits and personalities. Viewers eagerly anticipated episodes not only for the mystery, but to see how such seasoned performers would interpret their roles. Many guest villains were written specifically with certain actors in mind, allowing the scripts to tailor challenges that would suit the performers' strengths. For example, Robert Culp appeared multiple times as intelligent, smug adversaries, making their confrontations with Columbo feel like chess matches played at a masterful level. This bespoke writing kept the series dynamic and sharply focused on psychological gamesmanship. Some guest stars transcended their roles to become fan favorites, with audience reactions influencing their return to the series. John Cassavetes, renowned for his intense performance style, brought a raw edge to his villain that heightened dramatic tension. Leonard Nimoy's participation attracted sci-fi fans, broadening the show's appeal. These actors' reputations lent an added layer of prestige and intrigue. The diversity among guest stars also enriched the themes of each episode. Actors portrayed villains from various backgrounds and professions, from corporate executives to artists, which allowed the show to explore different social strata and cultural nuances. This variety broadened Columbo's scope as both a detective story and a social commentary on power and corruption. Behind the scenes, the mutual respect between Falk and his guest, stars often translated into spontaneous moments of brilliance during filming. Casual improvisations and off-script glances heightened the naturalism of their interactions, making scenes crackle with authenticity. This professional camaraderie reinforced the idea that Columbo's strength lay not only in its writing, but in the chemistry among its performers. The guest stars' impact extended beyond their initial episodes, influencing future casting decisions and cementing Columbo's status as a coveted platform for complex roles. Actors frequently praised the show for its thoughtful scripts and Falk's approachable professionalism, creating a positive legacy within the acting community. These rich character dynamics and visual storytelling thrived not only in the performances, but also in the very locations and environments where the series was filmed, which further deepened Columbo's immersive atmosphere, filming locations, and hidden details. Columbo's distinctive atmosphere came largely from its use of real filming locations throughout Los Angeles and parts of California. Instead of relying heavily on studio sets, the show often shot in actual neighborhoods, offices, mansions, and public spaces. This grounded the series in a believable world, making viewers feel as though the crimes and investigations were unfolding in familiar environments rather than constructed stages. The city functioned almost like an additional character, shaping tone and adding subtle storytelling layers. Early episodes showcased a wide range of locations, from lavish estates to gritty industrial areas, reflecting the social contrasts central to the show. These settings heightened the visual divide between Columbo's unassuming presence and the wealth or power of many suspects. His quiet confidence in environments where he didn't fit in amplified the tension and underscored the show's recurring themes of class and perception. Attention to detail also played a major role. The filmmakers used props and background elements to hint at motives, personality traits, or future twists. A suspect's cluttered office, filled with symbols of ego or excess, often contrasts with Columbo's simple surroundings, reinforcing character differences without needing explicit dialogue. The production also relied on everyday locations, diners, parking lots, small shops, to keep the show relatable and grounded. These ordinary spaces helped balance the high-stakes crimes with a sense of real-life familiarity, making the detective's process feel practical and achievable. By weaving authentic environments with subtle visual cues, Columbo created a rich, immersive world that enhanced both the mystery and the psychological depth of each episode. At times, the show would place higher-budget scenes in the background of small, intimate settings to increase the psychological intensity even more. Hallways or tiny offices that were close and crowded became the places where conflicts happened, and the cat-and-mouse tension between Columbo and the suspects flourished. Those places made it possible for the audience to feel the emotions of the characters more closely, revealing even the subtlest of facial expressions and the most common nervous gestures that would tell their own story. Another smart trick was the occasional use of weather, lighting, or time-of-day shifts to symbolize changes in the plot in the series. The rainy scenes or the fading daylight were indicative of the turning points in the investigation or the pressure building on the antagonist. Such a naturalistic use of environment served to support Columbo's style of being down-to-earth, which relied on mood and authenticity rather than resorting to using fancy cinematography. Frequently, the crews faced the behind-the-scenes logistical challenges of filming on location, from obtaining permits to coordinating complex shoots in busy cities. Still, these attempts proved fruitful as the actual presence of the locations gave the tales a hint of legitimacy. People who were familiar with Los Angeles could easily notice the places or streets, thus connecting them even more with the universe that Columbo lived in. The trips that Columbo made out of the city once in a while, for instance to desert towns or coastal areas, not only visually, but also significantly expanded the thematic scope of the show. Furthermore, these journeys had different social dynamics and brought in new storylines, thus keeping the sequences varied and exciting. The different places supported the hypothesis that Columbo's subtle genius could fit in any place, always watching and being patient. This interplay between setting and narrative paved the way for the show's subtle use of recurring themes and symbols that added yet another dimension to Columbo's world. Recurring themes and symbolism. Beneath Columbo's seemingly straightforward plots lies a web of recurring themes and symbolism that enrich the series and resonate with deeper human truths. One dominant motif is the contrast between appearance and reality. Columbo's rumpled exterior versus his sharp intellect, the polished veneer of suspects masking ruthlessness or guilt. This duality challenges viewers to question first impressions and consider the complexity hidden beneath the surface. Power and class disparities also recur throughout the show, highlighting tensions between the modest detective and affluent criminals. The series often critiques privilege and entitlement, portraying Columbo as the moral compass who exposes that wealth and status do not exempt one from justice. This theme reflects broader societal concerns of the 1970s and 1980s, tapping into viewers' awareness of inequality and corruption. Another symbolic element is Columbo's repeated use of seemingly trivial questions or distractions. His famous "just one more thing" interruptions serve both as narrative devices and metaphors for his persistent, layered approach to detective work. These moments disrupt suspects' composure and reveal hidden truths, symbolizing the power of patience and attention to detail over brute force. The recurring imagery of Columbo's battered Peugeot car and his well-worn trench coat exemplifies the theme of resilience and humility. These symbols reinforce his status as the underdog who succeeds not through dominance, but through steady perseverance and cleverness. They remind viewers that true strength often hides beneath modesty. Several episodes delve into guilt and conscience themes, and in the process, they show the suspects grappling with their moral dilemmas while Columbo gets closer. The psychological quality of these characters makes one think about the imperfection of humans and the complexity of morals, thus giving the story emotional weight that is beyond the procedural aspect. Columbo's lovable character exemplifies the humane side of the show, giving it a proposition of knowing the wrongdoer without justifying their act. The use of mirrors and reflections is a frequent element in the mise-en-scène, giving a visual cue to the duality of characters or the aspects of them that are kept hidden. The director's choices of this nature are so clever that they bring the themes of the story, fraud and truth, out very subtly. By using different angles and viewpoints, the series invites the audience to go deeper than the superficial, just as Columbo would do. In addition to mood and thematic undercurrents, music and sound motifs also play a significant role in reinforcing the emotions. The simple but vibrant Columbo soundtrack is in stark contrast to the loud and dramatic scores of other crime shows, which is in line with the series' subtlety and reliance on intellect rather than action. This oral finesse adds to the themes of patient persistence and hidden victory. Light and shadow are used in such a masterful way that they frequently bring to the fore the moments of revelation or the moments of weakness. The visuals used in this way are parallel to the uncovering of secrets and emotional exposure. Thus, in a way, the storytelling impact is increased without the use of dialogue. The careful light play leads the audience through the moral and psychological strata of the narrative. The thoughtful interplay of setting, character, and symbolism laid a foundation on which Columbo's legacy would continue to influence television crime dramas for decades without losing its timeless charm. Legacy and influence on crime. TV Columbo's influence on television crime dramas is both deep and long-lasting, establishing narrative and stylistic standards still used today. By popularizing the inverted detective story, the series broke away from traditional whodunits and shifted the spotlight to how the detective uncovers the truth. This focus on process, character psychology, and slow-building tension reshaped how crime shows approach suspense and audience engagement, inspiring many series to adopt similar structures. Peter Falk's portrayal also left a major impact on the genre. His version of a detective, humble, thoughtful, perceptive, and quietly persistent, stood in contrast to the flawless, larger-than-life heroes common at the time. Falk showed that vulnerability and subtlety could make a character more compelling. And this approach influenced later protagonists who blend intelligence with relatability. Decades later, Columbo's human, grounded style continues to guide modern character writing. Columbo's catchphrases and mannerisms, especially the iconic "just one more thing," became cultural symbols for relentless curiosity. These traits have been referenced, parodied, and honored across films, TV shows, books, and everyday conversation, proving how deeply the character has embedded itself in popular culture. The show's emphasis on intellect over action also paved the way for later series that prioritize psychological depth and methodical reasoning. Programs like Monk, Psych, and Lie to Me draw clear inspiration from Columbo's pacing, tone, and investigative style. They share its belief that the detective's mind, rather than plot twists or spectacle, is the most engaging element. Through innovative storytelling, memorable characterization, and enduring cultural touchstones, Columbo forever changed the landscape of crime television. In addition to that, the series received wider acceptance than the critics expected in terms of TV genre's categorization. It not only moved away from the simplistic and swiftly executed crime stories, but also proved that the audience is large enough to appreciate the complexity of characters and the richness of dialogues in the less call-in-style episodes. Thus, this opened up the possibilities of network TV production, and consequently, different styles and tones started to get the crime drama genre sprinkled with diversity. Columbo's artistic freedom has been largely connected to this creative revolution. The heavy reliance on guest stars who played the bad guys became a pattern that many shows adopted after Columbo. The series demonstrated that if there were big-name actors in the single villain roles, the quality of the episode and viewer interest would go up, at least partly. This technique has been very common in the crime dramas of the TV series format, as it has been the main reason for maintaining the audience's interest by providing fresh interactions and different personalities on the screen every week. Columbo was very good at turning the interaction between the main actor and the guest star into the captivating core of the story. On the technical side of things, Columbo should be credited with contributing to the development of filming that gave more intimacy and psychological tension, among which were shooting on-site and pacing that was meant for character focus. This influence of style can still be noticed in modern-day crime dramas that mix detective stories with movie-like storytelling. Instead of overwhelming the audience with pompous visuals or fast editing, Columbo demonstrated that slow and carefully done production values could raise the emotional and narrative impact of a show. Not even the use of humor combined with seriousness in the show had a great impact on crime dramas that tried to make the audience laugh without compromising the theme. Columbo's cleverness and occasional funny moments brought tension, relief, proving that tone flexibility could enhance character sympathies and deepen plot richness. From its unique format to Peter Falk's unforgettable portrayal and rich production details, Columbo redefined detective television in lasting ways. This classic series proves that clever writing and strong characters always outshine flashy gimmicks. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden details, be sure to like the video, subscribe for more deep dives into your favorite shows, and stick around to watch the next video shown on screen for even more surprises. Thanks for watching.